Welcome to The Flow, hosted by Bob Martin, slightly edgy glimpses into politics, culture, society, and being human.
Hey, good people. I'm going to tell you something that 40 years of trial law taught me, and it's this. The most dangerous schemes don't look like schemes. They look like policy. The Save America Act, what they call the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, looks like a voter ID bill. It's not. It's a blueprint for dismantling the machinery of American elections, piece by piece. Each piece individually defensible, the damage only visible when you see the whole picture at once. And I can prove it. I'll use the president's own words. Look, I'm a trial attorney. I prosecuted RICO cases, federal racketeering things. I know how this works. And I'm also a poll worker. I've stood in a precinct on election day and helped my neighbors vote for years. I think those two facts together are why I can tell you what I'm about to tell you. So let's go. Here's what the Save America Act actually does. And I mean actually, not what the White House says it does. This is what it does. It requires documentary proof of citizenship to register to vote, not an oath, which already exists and carries perjury penalties. It needs physical documents, passports, birth certificates, in-person registration, and on top of that, it adds photo ID to cast a ballot. It requires every state, dig this, to hand its complete voter registration database, names, addresses, birth dates, partial social security numbers to the Department of Homeland Security with zero restrictions on what DHS does with it. None. It mandates regular voter purges based on those DHS comparisons. Imagine that, giving the party in power the list of who belongs to the other party and the power to purge them from the voter rolls. It exposes poll workers, volunteers, your neighbors, to 5 years in federal prison if they register someone without the right paperwork, even if that person is actually a citizen. And now, because the bill was struggling to get votes in the Senate, President Trump has demanded 3 more things be added. 1, a near total ban on mail-in ballots. 2, a ban on transgender girls in female sports. 3, a ban on gender-affirming surgery for minors. And here is where I need to stop, because what's happening next is something you almost never see in 40 years of law, a witness stand confession. The president explained why, not in a leaked memo and not in a whistleblower's testimony, but he said out loud on the record in his own words, he said, and I want you to hear this exactly. The reason I put those other 2 in that that have not much to do with it is because they are equally popular and I think it might help us. Stop. The president of the United States just told you that provisions he is demanding be added to an election security bill have, in his own words, not much to do with it. That's not my analysis. It's not a Democratic talking point. That is the architect of the legislation confessing on the record that this bill is not about what it claims to be about. A prosecutor calls that statement against interest, unguarded, inadmissible in the sense that you can't walk it back, devastating. Now file it away. We're coming back to it. Here is the foundational fact that everything else depends on. The problem this bill claims to solve does not exist. Utah just finished a comprehensive review of their entire voter roll. 2 million registered voters, full citizenship audit. 1 non-citizen registration, 0 non-citizen votes. Now, it's already a federal crime for non-citizens to vote, has been since '96. Penalty is deportation. You already swear under oath. The deterrent is there. The problem isn't. So when Trump says, and he actually said this, we'll never lose a race for 50 years, we won't lose a race if this bill passes, you go do the math. If non-citizen voting is so rare that a 2 million voter audit turns up exactly 1 case, how does stopping it guarantee 50 years of Republican wins? It doesn't. The math does not work, which means The mechanism of advantage isn't what they're telling you it is. Now let's talk about what the mail-in ballot ban actually means, because this isn't a minor procedural tweak. 50 million Americans voted by mail in the last presidential election. They're not cheaters. They're military families stationed overseas, elderly Americans, people with disabilities, shift workers who can't stand in line for 3 hours, rural voters whose nearest polling place is 45 minutes away. 8 states, plus Washington, D.C., automatically mail ballots to every registered voter. Utah, Colorado, California, Oregon, among them, all gone. And here's what makes this particularly sharp. The people most dependent on mail voting are many of the same people the documentation requirements are already hitting hardest. The elderly voter who doesn't have a passport, the disabled voter who can't navigate a consolidated precinct, the rural voter who can't get to an office to present documents in person. This bill just doesn't hit them once. It hits them coming and going. Trump wants to eliminate the method of voting they depend on while simultaneously making registration harder. Both barrels, same people. 21 million Americans don't have ready access to the documents this bill requires. Half of all Americans don't have a passport. Millions of women have name discrepancies between their birth certificates and their current IDs. Every married woman who changed her name is navigating this. Now, let me give you the honest counter argument. Not all of these people are Democrats. Rural Republicans, elderly conservatives, they get hit too. But here's the difference. This is what they're depending on. A committed voter clears the hurdle. They drive to the DMV. They dig up the paperwork. They do what it takes. The marginal voter, busy, loosely attached, hits an obstacle and thinks, forget it, don't vote. That person statistically leans Democratic. So in races decided by thousands of votes, that calculation is the whole ballgame. Now let's go back to those transgender provisions, because I said we'd come back to them, and this is important. Banning males in female sports and banning gender-affirming surgery for minors, whether you support those policies or not, have absolutely nothing to do with election security. Nothing. The president said so himself. Not much to do with it, he said. So what are they doing in this bill? Two things. Both of them are pretty cynical. First, they're vote bait. These provisions poll well with the Republican base. Trump looked at a bill that was struggling to get through the Senate and bolted on the most viscerally motivating culture war issues he could, and had in order to pressure reluctant Republicans to fall in line. He called it, I promise I'm not making this up, the best of Trump. Legislative strategy reduced to a greatest hits package. Second, and this is the part I want you to sit with, what does it say to every LGBT plus American when the government attaches explicitly anti-transgender provisions to an election bill? It says, this bill knows who you are, and it's not on your side. You don't have to put a law on the books that says LGBT plus people may not vote to suppress the turnout. You just have to make every member of that community feel like the act of registering, of showing up, of making themselves visible to this government is dangerous. The documentation requirements already hit transgender Americans hard. A transgender woman whose passport reflects a former name runs directly into this name discrepancy wall. This explicitly anti-trans provisions and the same legislation, and the message is absolutely unmistakable. Stay home, stay invisible, stay safe. This isn't election security. It's targeted intimidation. Now, the piece nobody's talking about, and it might be the most operationally dangerous of all, is this. I'm a poll worker. The bill asks every poll worker across America to make real-time authenticity judgments on citizenship documents from dozens of countries. Documents I've never seen, Name discrepancies I have to adjudicate on the spot under pressure with a line of voters behind me. And if I get it wrong, even if the person I turned away is actually a citizen, 5 years of federal lockup. No good faith protection, none. You know what rational people do when you attach 5-year federal prison sentences to volunteer work? They quit. The experienced ones go first. The people who've done this for 10, 15, 20 years, who train the others, who know the procedures, who are the institutional memory of how elections actually run, they walk out the door. What's left is an inexperienced workforce making high-stakes calls under pressure with nobody to turn to. Precincts can't be staffed, they consolidate, lines get crushing, people who can't wait to get home, those votes are gone permanently, no remedy. The precincts that do open make mistakes. A chain of custody gets compromised, provisional ballots get mishandled, and every single one of those failures, real, documented, genuine failures, becomes ammunition for post-election litigation. Unlike 2020, where fraud claims were fabricated and courts threw them out because there was no actual evidence of administrative breakdown, this bill manufactures the breakdown. The lawsuits that follow won't be dismissed so easily because the failures will be real. One more, the part that genuinely chills me. Every state hands its complete voter roll to DHS. Names, addresses, birth dates, partial social security numbers, every registered voter in America, with no restrictions on what the government does with it. The same administration that has sued 24 states to force voter roll disclosure, that has allies openly talking about surrounding polling places with ICE agents, that has deployed federal power against political opponents with documented regularity, now they have your address. And here's the dark part. They don't have to do anything with it to win. All they need to do is make people feel vulnerable and wonder if they might. Registration becomes a risk, a calculation. Some people rationally, reasonably decide the risk isn't worth it. No government action required, no door blocked, just fear doing its work quietly. So let me bring this all together. Trump told you himself that parts of this bill have not much to do with election security. Trump told you himself that Republicans will never lose a race for 50 years if it passes. Two statements, both true, both devastating, because they cannot coexist with the stated rationale of this legislation. You don't get 50 years of guaranteed victory by stopping a problem so rare it barely shows up in a 2 million voter audit. And you don't attach sports bans and surgical restrictions to an election bill unless you need the culture war to carry the weight the evidence can't. But you're looking at it as a system. What you're looking at is a system. Documentation requirements that shrink the voter pool, a mail ban that eliminates how people vote, criminal liability that guts the election workforce, voter data that enables intimidation, anti-trans provisions that send a message to an entire community about who this government sees as welcome at the polls. Each piece defensible, the whole thing a machine. Look, I know what a machine looks like when every gear is individually explainable and the output is the thing nobody's allowed to say out loud. The output is this: elections that are harder to administer, easier to challenge, and increasingly under the control of the people who already hold power. Look, democracy doesn't die in a moment. It gets administered to death, quietly, legally, one defensible mechanism at a time. I'm a poll worker. I may have to decide whether I keep doing that work. And if people like me walk away, you should be very afraid of who fills the vacuum. So share this. Talk about it. Sign up to be a poll worker, because the right to change your government through your vote is not a partisan value. It's the only value that makes all the others possible. Right now, it needs you. But let me leave you with something they haven't counted on. I think they're wrong. I think they have fundamentally miscalculated the human beings on the other end of this legislation. The voters they're counting on to jump through every hoop, the ones who were promised an America First agenda, who were promised jobs, lower prices, a government that works for them, those voters are watching. And when they realize this administration spent its political capital not on their kitchen table, but on making it harder for their neighbors to vote, I think they're going to feel something powerful. I think they're going to feel betrayed. And the voters this bill was designed to discourage, the ones they figured would hit an obstacle and walk away, I don't think that they've met those voters lately, because nothing motivates people like being told their voice doesn't matter. Nothing. History's pretty clear on this. Every time a government has tried to silence a community by making voting harder, that community has shown up angrier, more organized, more determined. They don't break, they mobilize. So here is the charge. Whatever obstacles they put in your path, the paperwork, the lines, the purged rolls, the consolidated precincts, you clear them. Every single one of them. You get the documents, you get in line, you bring your neighbors, you bring your church, you bring everybody you know, and do not surrender the most fundamental right you have as an American because someone made it inconvenient. And me, I'll be there too. I'm going to take my place at my precinct as a poll worker, come hell or high water, because that's what citizens do. That is what democracy requires, not spectators, participants. They can pass every law they want. They can't pass a law that takes away your willingness to fight for your own voice. Hey, I'll see you at the polls.